Hi everyone, Tim the Plane Man here, and welcome back to Plane Time Sopwith Camel Edition. So I'm really pleased to be able to give you a bit of an update on where I've been at with the build of the Guillows Sopwith Camel RC conversion. You can see the model here where I've basically got all of the bits pretty much together, and I'm not going to go through and I haven't got a video that goes through all the details, although if you keep watching at the end of this you'll see a bit of a time lapse that shows the progress from the last part, which was just the wings, through to building the fuselage and adding some of the pieces to get to this point, which is kind of pretty pretty exciting to see everything coming together like this. It's very, very nice. It's been fun to build it so far, and I really enjoyed how well designed this 50-odd-year-old plan and the kit comes together. It's really very, very nicely designed kit. I can see why it's so popular. The plans are so comprehensive, it's complete. It's really, really been fun. So, but what I want to tell you about is not so much just building the kit. Like I said, many other people have built this kit probably far better than I. But what I have got here is something about how I've been doing the radio control conversion, and I'm going to show you what I've come up with some interesting questions because of that not being included in the kit, and how I've managed to kind of pull that all together. So as you can see, we've got the top wing here, and what I've decided to do with the top wing is that's not going to have ailerons to start with. So from the electronics perspective, not interesting. I mean, it will be very interesting when we put that together and mount it with these bits. I forget the name for now. And I'm going to be mounting that with the top ring removable, a bit like Cliff Harvey did with the Newport, I think it was, and oh no, the Bannock, the way he built the Bannock, and I'll make that removable because I really need to be able to get at things. So the next thing that happens with this and how the electronics come together into the plane is how I managed to figure out how to get all of the electronics into the plane but still have access to them. And that's the most fascinating part of this challenge, because I've seen some of the other examples of how people have built battery compartments in behind the cowling, and built in the electronics on the way through the build, but with no access. And I know maybe it's just for me and my experience, but how I'm building this plane and how I'm going to fly the plane, going to guarantee you that later on, after the first crash or some lesson that I learned, even if I don't crash it but want to trim or improve, that I'm going to have to get at things. So what I did is I took this awesome canopy that basically comes out of the kit with the pilot and the guns and the whole cockpit area of the plane, and simply made it removable. So that pops off. I've got two little two little magnets there, with magnets on the back of this, so that will just clip in. Just clicks in together. This is going to be where the two pieces that connect the upper wings will go, and that will basically just clip in underneath the edge of the cowling here at the front, and clip on so that when it flies, you'll have your pilot and your guns. When you need to have access, well, look at that. There I've got the receiver ESC combo pack that I've got, the wires that run through to the motor in the side of the plane, and The next piece is the servos. So these are the elevator and rudder servos. These are 3.7 gram digital servos. I have separate pictures of those, and I'll put the specs. I'll put the specs for all of this into the description. So but you notice that they're actually mounted upside down. What I did was between B3 and B4, I just put two kind of runners, again made with that really lightweight 1.5 millimeter plywood that I got, but just two strips. I didn't need to build a whole shelf for it, so one shelf at each end, each side. But if I found that if I mounted the servos at the bottom, they would stick out too far at the bottom. And if I mounted them the right way up here, they actually stuck up too far at the top, and I had no way to get access to the servo arms in order to be able to feed the control rod into them. But what I did by mounting it upside down, I've actually got this perfect place where the control rods can actually run right through the middle of the plane here, where there's the holes through the formers basically just made for it, all the way through to the back of the plane, and they'll pop out here at the end, almost exactly where they need to be, just running straight down the back of the plane for the elevator and aileron control horns, which will basically sit at the back of the plane here, and the control horns will pop out here. So by mounting those servos upside down with the controls, the servo arms effectively underneath, and I've got little connectors there for connecting in. What I'm going to use is 1 millimeter carbon fiber rod that are going to drive the elevator and the rudder. And I don't know, they're digital servos, so they're very powerful. According to my calculations, they're totally overpowered for what's needed here. I could have possibly used smaller servos, but because of my little experiment here with the wing servos, I do want to make sure that I have that as a backup. If the plane gets in the air and for some reason my wing servos that I did all my calculations and spent all that effort on, you can see that in another video on the playlist that this video is in. There's a playlist, and I'll link to the playlist, and you can go there and you can see the how I discussed the calculations and figuring out that these wing servos are actually going to should be able to drive the plane with these tiny little 1.7 gram digital servos. So that's all very interesting. So just for a second, I'm just going to try and turn this on its side a little bit, so hopefully you can see inside the plane. So there's not really much that happens at the bottom. The only thing that's going to happen at the bottom of the plane will be access to the servos if I need to get access to the control rod. So it's a little awkward, but they're worst case, I can get in at the top, and I'll need to get in at the bottom. So I'm going to put a little bit of a hatch on the bottom there for those. And apart from that, there's not really much that happens at the bottom, because there's really too much that gets in the way. And in any case, there'll be undercarriage on here. Once the undercarriage goes on, and that needs to be mounted fairly firmly, there's not really going to be any useful or meaningful access to the bottom of the plane. So what I've done is made it so almost everything goes in at the top, except for one thing, which is the battery. And the battery, which is where I discussed doing this earlier, actually goes in at the side of the plane with this interesting little hatch arrangement that I built in here at the side of the plane, where the battery just slides in like this, pops around, and then I don't know if you can see that there, but the battery then slides forward into this battery box. So I'm going to just push it forward there. slides forward into this battery box, and it pushes forward to the very front of the battery box, where there's a piece of Velcro at the front of the battery box that will stop it from sliding backwards. This little battery box that I've built in here, again following an example from Cliff Harvey, and I'll find a picture that I can show you the battery box before I installed it in the plane. I think I have a picture of that. It's just a little very fine plywood, very light plywood, 1.5 millimeter plywood that is fairly strong. I put some holes in it for ventilation, but I've also made that battery box so it can slide, and it is held down at the very front just by a piece of Velcro again, so that if I need to, and I'd have to remove the firewall at the front of the plane here, but if I remove that firewall, I can lift up that front of that battery box, and if I need to adjust the center of gravity, I can slide that backwards. My current guess is that I want that battery as far forward as possible, and it may not even be enough, but that's a 50-gram battery, which hopefully will be enough to get the center of gravity of this plane forward enough so that I'm not, that it will fly. And we all know basically the adage is a tail-heavy plane won't fly. A front-heavy plane, you can fly it. So I'm going to err on the side of caution at this point and assume that battery needs to go as far forward as possible. So that battery box is slid right in there. The battery is mounted in there, and I've got my little hatch here, which I plan to mount a little door on the side that I haven't quite mounted yet. I'm going to be putting some magnets. There's 4 little magnets on that little door, and I'm going to mount that door over there so that will clip on while the plane's flying, and then I can pop it off and slide the hatch out. So that's all very exciting. But what's even more exciting is what happens when I fire it up.
Welcome to OpenTX.
Because
switch warning. Trainer off. Throttle cut.
Alright, so the receiver is bound, everything is actually plugged in together, and well, look what happens. So actually what I might do is just pop in these ailerons so that I can get the full effect. Sliding the hinges in, there we go, that works just fine. Slide the hinges in, and hopefully we can get that zoomed in so that you can see how that needs to slot in there. I'm not actually going to pop the aileron on first right away. I'll wait until I turn on the transmitter and center the servos before I pop the aileron, which is hard mounted. If you've seen my other video, the aileron is actually hard mounted right inside the wing, and will be driving the ailerons will be driving those servos directly with no control horns, no control rods. The servo directly controls the aileron. So if that all works, then I get to save the weight and all of the structure associated with building control horns, building control rods, and the servo arms and all of those things. So that should be very interesting. So the other thing that I've done in terms of building the electronics in, if you notice, I've connected up the battery, but nothing happened. The reason is because I've put a switch in here. So again, if you look on the side of the plane right there, you can see right here there's a switch, and I decided that it made me feel really uncomfortable to have to plug in my battery and then do all the fiddling around to push it into the plane, and I've got a door that I'm going to have to put on, it's going to be quite awkward, and I don't want to have to do all of that with the system under power. So I put a switch in, and it was actually fairly straightforward. I bought the switch. The switch actually has a connector, this JST style connector. It just plugs in. So the wire is a little long, but this wire, which is where the battery connects to, runs to the switch. The switch cable is a little long, but it runs a little bit through here. That's where I've actually spliced it together into the power cable that comes off the back of the receiver here. So that's the JST for the receiver at the top there, and that goes down here, down underneath, and I do have to just make sure that it's not going to interfere with the servos. I'm going to maybe tape that down a little bit just to make sure, but it should be fine. So effectively what I have is, well, I do have a switch, so I can plug the battery in, insert it in the battery box, enclose everything, close everything up, and then power it up when I'm ready. So that's in a nutshell how all of the changes that I made to the model in order to get the electronics in. And it's a simple on-off switch, basically in series with the battery. And so until I flip that switch, there's no power. And guess what? I'm going to flip it and see what happens. Okay, well, we had all the noises that we need to have happen when that works. Hopefully we've got elevator, and if you can see that just down there, the elevator is working fine, and we should have this other one here work with our rudder. Sorry, our rudder. There's our rudder, and you probably couldn't see if the ailerons were working because they're so tiny. So this is why I wanted to get the point of actually popping those little ailerons on, and I'll do the other one as well. And I just clip that in place. Careful. It's quite fragile, so I want to be careful with things. So, okay, so let's just see. I think I should prop that up a little bit so it's not against the... Alright, so now we should have our ailerons. Oops. Sorry, we should have our ailerons. And look at that. One of them's working. And the other one isn't working. And I'll have to figure out what's going on with that. This one is running on channel 2, so I think, oh yes, I'll do a little bit of debugging. Well, there's an interesting test. Oh, and just lastly, just to confirm, got my throttle, and there's, oh, look at that. Well, when I move my throttle, my aileron moves, so that's kind of unfortunate. And something that I think I need to fix, and I just want to warn you about this one too. There's a separate video about this. It's really important. Don't mess with the channel order on your Jumper TX radio. I've done that. I messed with the channel order. You'll see the video. Don't do it, and you'll end up with problems like I have here that I'll now have to solve. So for some reason, that second aileron is now running on the same channel as my throttle. And what I deliberately did when I was wiring this up is I decided that I'm going to run the ailerons on separate channels. So technically that should be channel 1 and channel 6. And for some reason that's not what's happening. Let me just simply put it like that. So, and in fact, I think I understand what I've done wrong. So I'm just going to pause now. Feel free to keep watching. So I'm just going to turn the power off, which is kind of nice having that switch. I love that switch idea. It really works well. And really the answer is that I've put that servo on the wrong connector, because that actually should be AETR, and there's my second aileron. So I've actually put that in incorrectly, and I just need to put it into A, which is channel 1, and if that's correct, then it means my logic makes sense, AETR makes sense, and all is good with the world. So turn it on again, throttle off, throttle cut, power on, and yeah, so now my ailerons are working fine, except I don't have that one centered properly, which is easy fixed. So ailerons, rudder, elevator, and now motor moving by itself without the aileron. So everything is perfect actually. Well, not quite. Let me just push that servo arm onto there, fire things up again. All right, now this should be finally the moment of truth. Ailerons. Look at that. Oh, they're moving the same direction. That's easy fixed. So I've got up, down on the ailerons, and they're on 2 channels, so I can just reverse one. I say that, but you know how easy it is to do that. I shall just go to my outputs. Let's reverse channel 6. TAER. Let's try reversing. Okay, there we go. There it is, all fixed. So I now have ailerons working in opposite directions, and I have ailerons on separate channels, so I can trim them if necessary independently. They're fairly close to being centered. That one on the left is actually a little bit off, but it's pretty good. And again, motor, rudder, elevator, ailerons. I'm sure I'll replay this moment several times, but there we have it. There's our electronics, fully connected, wired up, and accessible. I can pop that cockpit pilot assembly off anytime I need to get at anything. I can pop it back on when I need it to look pretty and I want to fly the plane. I can access the battery in the side, and I can access the servos here. The one thing I won't really be able to access once I cover the wings will be these wing aileron servos. They're pretty much going to be, if I need something, I'm going to have to remove the covering. I couldn't solve that problem, and I don't think I'm going to be able to, but I think that mostly that should be fine. The main thing that I think that I may change here, not 100% locked in yet, but I do, and I have deliberately left space right here at the front of the plane for a stabilizer, and which is the main reason why my receiver is as far back as it is. I actually originally was going to put the receiver at the front here, and then I figured out that the center of gravity of this plane is incredibly, according to the instructions here. So the free flight point of balance right here, as shown on this plane that's starting to get a bit ratty, is actually at the leading spar, not the you know, not the leading edge, but the front spar of the wing. That's But that's the center of gravity for free flight. Now I could use that free flight center of gravity, but I could also, and this is the other interesting point, there's a center of gravity here for U control, which is for control line flying. Now that center of gravity is actually further forward. It's right at the leading edge of the bottom wing, actually. So if the center of gravity is at this spar that's just behind this former here, then then that would be the center of gravity here. But if the center of gravity is at the leading edge of the spar, and I'm going to err on the side of forward is better, then the center of gravity up here is probably around about here, and it's about where I've got that piece of Velcro that I originally had used for mounting the receiver. If I put in a stabilizer with a gyro, the best place to put a gyro is at the center of gravity, so that it can actually basically the gyro can rotate around the center of gravity of the plane. So I've left. This is why I've moved the receiver back. And if the gyro stabilizer that I've ordered, it hasn't quite arrived, comes along, I can mount that here, and I would then have to run my servo wires further around the receiver, but it'll be fine. But I can actually mount the gyro stabilizer about there. So I'm going to power off now. Well, actually not quite. I'll just do that one more time just for the fun of it. There's my ailerons, there's my rudder, there's my elevator, and there's my beautiful little 2212 motor sitting at the front of the plane. And that motor is quite interesting, really powerful, less than 10 grams. I think it's 6.7 grams, but a very light motor, but a very powerful motor with a nice long stem here for the propeller, which I'll do this too. The interesting thing about that is how nicely it just pops through the front of the cowling on the plane, which I still have to arrange to mount nicely, but it will actually pop mount there, and if I mount it quite nicely, then you can see that that propeller shaft sticks just perfectly through the front of the cowling. That little round mounting piece at the front of the motor is sort of almost like purpose built to fit this little cowling assembly that I've got here. And really it's just a question of making sure that I can mount the cowling so that it's stable and doesn't move. So I have to be very careful how I do that. But that cowling is where you shall see power off. Since I've got that here, I'm just going to show you how that actually works. The cowling is going to be the cockpit will slide underneath the top of the cowling like that, and that clips down there, and so as you can see, that's going to be really quite nice how that sits on the front of the plane. If I can get that cowling to mount properly there. Oops, popped off, but that's the point. That's where I need to be able to mount it. Okay, so the propeller there, and I might as well show you, since I have it here, this side piece on the plane here will slide in there, again under the edge of the cowling. I'll just hold it there for now so you can see the effect. That's how the side of the plane's going to look when it all comes together. So that's the stuff that I'm going to work on next. Pulling that all together, making it look pretty, and also building out the final set of structure. Well, since I've got you here and I've got all the pieces in front of me, I think I'm going to weigh this plane. I can get a fair idea. I want to know sort of how close I'm getting to my ideal weight for this plane, which is I'm hoping to get the plane under 200 grams if I can, and this is really my first checkpoint. I haven't tried up to now to do this, so let's see if I can balance all of the things that I want to weigh together on this wing, single wing here. So that wing itself, if I have it not supporting anything, okay, 25 grams. Let me pop the rest of the plane on top of it, and there's 200 grams. Well, it's not going to happen that I'm going to get this under the 200 grams that I was targeting. I'm already 205 grams as we stand. So let's see if I add my control surfaces. $210 grams. Oops, that doesn't balance nicely, does it? There we go, 215 grams, and there's more to come. I have these guys, a little door. It's going to go on the side here. I'm up to 220 grams so far, and I don't have the undercarriage, and I haven't covered the plane. So I guess I'm dreaming. If I think I'm going to get this under 200 grams, it's not going to happen. For whatever reason, I've already included too much weight. It's not bad in some respects. I mean, one thing that I do have that I think I could save some weight on is that battery. That battery is 50 grams right away. Now there is another option with the battery. I don't have it in front of me, but I have some smaller, this is a 2S 800 milliamp hour battery, and I think it should be good for powering this plane, but there is a possibility of using a smaller 650 milliamp hour battery that I have that is probably half the weight, so I could probably save 30 grams or so, 25 to 30 grams by using a different battery, but I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to power the plane. So we shall see, but fascinating. 221 grams right now. I think that's, oh, I haven't got the cowling on. Look at that. Let's put the cowling on the plane as well, and now we're at 230. So it's definitely going to weigh over 250 grams, which is, I'm a little disappointed because I was honestly hoping to get it under the magic 250 grams. That's not going to happen, but considering everything that I've got here, the 230 grams, well, maybe not so bad. So next step, stick around. If you like what you've seen so far, please hit the like button. Consider subscribing. I'll be posting more. Like I said, there's some very interesting videos about the Sopwith Camel build already in the playlist that this video is in. The playlist already includes the unboxing, which you might want to have a look at, the initial construction where I built the wings, and that's mostly a time lapse, which is kind of fun to watch. There's a video specifically about my aileron magic with the direct drive ailerons. You can watch that one, and this video will be there, and then I'll be adding new ones. There's also some other interesting videos I've found that are not mine online about the Sopwith Camel. Specifically, I think I've got a history of the Sopwith Camel. I've got some flights of replicas, like full-size planes, showing a couple of them, I think. showing full-size replicas of the plane actually flying. And then I have an interview with Sir Thomas Sopwith, the mastermind, the founder of the Sopwith Camel, of the Sopwith Company, Sopwith Aviation Limited, the company that built the Sopwith series of planes during World War One. The Sopwith Pup, the Sopwith Camel, there was the Sopwith Dolphin, I think, the Sopwith Snipe, several other Sopwith planes. And interestingly, and you can see this in the video, Sopwith himself, in partnership with his test pilot during World War One, whose name was Harry Hawker, an Australian, started the Hawker Aviation Company after World War One was over. And the Hawker Aviation Company, which basically was run by Sir Thomas Sopwith as, you know, Sopwith Aviation Limited Mark II, was the company that built the famous Hawker Hurricane World War II fighter that fought alongside the Spitfire during World War II, and also the fairly famous Hawker, the Harrier jump jet, that was a jet airplane in the British Navy, and I think was also sold to the Americans and other air forces. The jump jet was able to take off vertically and then convert into forward flight, which was a pretty amazing innovation at the time. So back in the, I believe, in the 1980s. So all Sir Thomas Sopwith, the man who built the Sopwith Camel for the Allied forces during World War One. So all of that is in the playlist, and so encourage you to have a look and come back, subscribe. I'll be sharing more about my completing the build of the Sopwith Camel over the next, we shall see. I'm thinking weeks, but at the rate I've been going so far, maybe months. But we'll get there, and it will fly. Thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.